Okay, so Chapter 7 deals with making a worksheet for your business. Now, when you posted everything, basically what you did is you finished a whole month's worth of accounting. You put everything onto a worksheet to make sure that you've got everything ready to do your end of the month financial records or statements. So a fiscal period or accounting period is length of time that a business prepares the reports. You have to do it for sure once a year, but most businesses do this every month. Businesses usually choose a date to do this, once a year submission, when their business is the slowest, because it takes a lot of work to gather a whole year's worth of information. So a worksheet is used to summarize all of your general ledger accounts before you make those reports. So there's 4 things that a worksheet does. They summarize the general ledger information on a trial balance. So all it does is make sure that after you've posted, your debits equal your credits. Then it also plans for adjustments. Now, up until now, we've been purchasing supplies and we've been purchasing prepaid insurance. But nowhere along the lines have we ever shown that we've used supplies or we've used prepaid insurance. So we have to do that at the end of this month. Now, it doesn't make sense that every time you use a supply out of your company that you write it down and you keep track. So you only do this either once a month or once a year or however many times your company needs you to do it. Then it also sorts things into reports. There's a report called a balance sheet, which you know about, and an income statement, which you're about to learn about. And you also need to show what your net income or net loss is for the business for that particular part of time. So you have a worksheet heading, and you always put the company's name first. Then you put what are you making, a worksheet, and you put the date, and you use the words for month ended. Or if you're only doing it once a year, you would put for year ended. This shows the worksheet covers 31 days of July. This is what a worksheet looks like. So these top 3 lines here are for your heading. Okay? Then you're going to take each of your general ledger accounts. So you have, say, for instance, cash, you have supplies, and you're going to list them down in here. In these 2 columns, you're going to put the balances. So what did you have in your cash account? If you had $4,000 at the end, you would put $4,000 debit. You would list all of those. At the end, you're going to add them up and make sure your debits equal your credits. If you do, you're going to double underline it. The adjustments is where we're going to write in the supplies we've used and the prepaid insurance that we've used. And then income statement, everything that goes on an income statement is going to be listed in these 2 columns, and everything that a balance sheet reports will be listed there. So that's where we're going with this chapter. Okay, so we've talked about this already. Even if an account has a balance of 0, you still need to put it in your worksheet. If you look at page 111 of your textbook, it gives you an example of a completed worksheet. Okay, so this is one of the toughest things for people to understand, and it's the adjustments. So some general ledger accounts do not show up-to-date balances. So we must change or adjust these accounts. The 2 that we deal with, I already talked about, was prepaid insurance and supplies. Okay, so we'll talk about supplies first. We debit supplies when we purchase supplies, but we don't credit the account every time a supply is used. So we need to make an adjustment at the end of the fiscal period. And exactly the same thing has to happen for prepaid insurance. Okay, so this is how you make an adjustment. You plan the adjustments on a worksheet. These adjustments that you're doing or making are considered expenses of doing business. If you own a business, an expense that you just have to have is using supplies. Okay, and when you actually make these adjustments, they are called adjusting entries. Okay, so here's an example. On July 31st, before adjustments, Law Master's supply account has a balance of $1,835. They count the supplies still on hand and the value of supplies of $850. So here are 4 questions you can ask yourself. What is the balance of the supplies account? $1,835. What should the balance be? So when you count them, you only have $850 worth. So what do you have to do to correct the balance? You have to decrease it. You have to decrease it from 1835 down to 850. Okay, so that's what the decrease is. And what adjusting entry is made. So you have supplies, and the expense account to go along with that is going to be called supplies expense. Supplies expense is exactly the same as other expense accounts, and it's debit balances. Every time you do a supplies expense transaction, the basket's getting more filled. So at the beginning of the month, you're starting with 1835 worth of supplies, so it has to go there. You have to adjust or bring down the supplies account by 985, so you put it on the opposite side. So at the end of the month, your balance has a debit at $850. Now, remember that every transaction has to have two parts. So here's your first part. The second part is you have to put an expense account in that basket of 985, so it goes on the debit side. Okay, so now to record that, let's say you've already done your trial balance, you get down to the bottom, and everything balances. So you have a total here and a total here. So it balances, so it's good. We need to go now and do the adjustments column. So if you look back on the page before, your supplies had a credit of 985. Do you see this? Right here. And your supplies expense had a debit of 985. So you need to go and put that into the adjustment column. So supplies, credit of 985, supplies expense, debit 985. And do you see these A's in front of there? That just means that those two go together. Now we need to do exactly the same thing for prepaid insurance. Okay, so what is the balance of the prepaid insurance? $700. A review of insurance records show that you actually only have $110. So what must be done to correct the account? We have to decrease it. And if you want to be more specific, you have to decrease it by $590. Okay, so what adjusting entries made? You have your prepaid insurance, and you have your insurance expense. Your prepaid insurance, you know, has a debit balance, and so does your insurance expense, just to keep that straight. So you have to decrease your prepaid insurance by $590, so it has to be on the credit side. And your insurance expense basket is getting more filled, so that's going to be a debit of $590. So you need to take that and you get transferred onto here now. So wherever you have the next available open space, you have to do these adjustments here. So let's say you had your prepaid insurance here, and down at the bottom you have your insurance expense. Your prepaid insurance is going down $590, so that's a credit, and your insurance expense is increasing. And then you can put a little letter B. You would want to do this all in the same column. I just ran out of room there. You put a B and a B. Okay? So if you look at page 115, it'll show you at the bottom how to prove that your debits equal your credits. Same thing, you just add your debits and your credits to make sure you have the same amount. Okay, now there's also the last two headings, which is income statement and balance sheet. It's important to know that an income statement always shows only your revenue and your expenses, and the balance sheet, you already know this, shows your assets and liabilities. So you extend the balances from the trial balance and the adjustment columns into these new columns. So if you look at page 116, it gives you an example of what a complete worksheet would look like. Okay, and on page 121, there's some steps listed there for you. So you transfer everything from the trial balance either into the income statement columns or the balance sheet columns. Okay, and then there's some examples there for you to also help you out.